Just go. Leave me alone. I'm so tired of this. Austin roared, his voice shattering the quiet of the small cafe. His outburst hit Chris like a slap, leaving him reeling, curious, even scornful. Eyes turned towards them. Chris felt his face burn. So ashamed he wanted to crawl into a hole. Harmony Creek, a quiet, peaceful small town nestled deep in the American South, was known for its shady, old oak trees and slow pace of life. But for Chris, Harmony Creek hadn't felt peaceful since he met Austin, a man 10 years his senior with an undeniable charm. The town, once a safe haven, had become a battleground where he had to fight for his love. It all started on a rainy afternoon at the Book Nook, the used bookstore where Austin worked. Chris, a true bookworm, was drawn to Austin's warm smile and intelligent eyes. That day, when Austin handed Chris a copy of The Great Gatsby, with the note, "Hope you enjoy it," Chris knew his life had changed forever. From then on, Chris visited the bookstore often, finding excuses to talk to Austin. Gradually, Chris's feelings for Austin grew, surpassing mere friendship. He was aware of the age difference between them, but his young heart couldn't be controlled. He kept telling himself, "Love isn't wrong, we're just too different," but he still couldn't give up. "Don't you understand? You're just a kid," Austin said, his voice softening slightly, but still full of weariness. He ran a hand over his face, trying to control his anger. Chris saw the helplessness and pain in his eyes, and his heart ached. "I can't do this. I don't want to get involved in this. Forget about me, Chris. I can't." "Austin, I love you," Chris shouted, tears streaming down his face. He grabbed Austin's hand, as if afraid he would disappear. He wanted to show him that his feelings were genuine, that he would do anything to protect this love. "I know you might not believe me, but my feelings are real. I'll do anything for you." Austin looked at Chris with a complex expression, a mixture of pity and irritation. He knew Chris was a good kid, intelligent and full of passion, but he also knew the difficulties and obstacles they would face if they went any further. The age difference, the stigma of society, the judgmental looks from family and friends, all of that scared him. He kept asking himself, "Am I being selfish to drag Chris into such a risky relationship?" "Chris, you deserve someone better than me," Austin said, his voice somber. "I've been through too much. I don't want to hurt you. Find someone who is more suitable for you. Someone who can bring you happiness." He remembered the unfinished relationships of his past, the pain he had endured. He didn't want Chris to go through the same thing. "You're the one who makes me happy," Chris argued, his voice choked with emotion. "I don't need anyone else. I only need you." He felt like someone was tearing his heart apart. He couldn't imagine what his life would be like without Austin. Austin sighed, rubbing his temples. He knew he couldn't convince Chris with words. This kid was too stubborn and determined. He could only hope that time would help Chris realize the truth. He thought about moving to another town, starting a new life, but the thought of that made him feel pain, because he knew he would never be able to forget Chris. "Just leave me alone," Austin said, his voice cold. He tried to suppress his emotions, creating an invisible wall between them. "Just leave me alone." With that, Austin turned and walked away, leaving Chris standing alone in the cozy corner cafe. His heart broken, Chris watched Austin's retreating figure, tears flowing freely. He knew that the road ahead would be difficult, but he had no intention of giving up. He vowed to himself that he would prove to Austin that his love was genuine, that age was not a barrier, and that they could have a happy future together. He wouldn't let anyone, not even Austin, stop him. In the days that followed, Chris relentlessly sought ways to approach Austin. He went to the bookstore every day, helping him organize books and clean the store. He even brought him hot cups of coffee and homemade cookies, hoping to melt his heart. He wrote emotional love letters and secretly placed them in Austin's drawer. He even learned about the books that Austin loved and read them so he could share them with him. He wanted to show him that he understood him, that he cared about him more than anyone else in the world. However, Austin kept his distance from Chris, trying to ignore his efforts. He was afraid that if he allowed Chris to get any closer, he wouldn't be able to control himself. He knew Chris was a sweet temptation, but he also knew that this relationship would bring more suffering than happiness. He kept tormenting himself. Do I have the right to be so selfish? Do I have the right to steal Chris's youth? One day when Chris was at the bookstore, He accidentally overheard a conversation between Austin and a close friend named Sarah. "You have to be firm with him," Sarah said. "You can't let him keep following you around like this. He has his whole future ahead of him. Don't ruin his life." Sarah was a close friend of Austin. She was always worried about him and wanted him to have a stable life. "I know," Austin replied, his voice tired. "I've tried my best. But he won't listen. I don't know what else to do." He felt helpless, as if he was trapped in a tangled mess with no way out. "You have to be strong," Sarah said. "Tell him the truth, that you don't love him, that nothing can happen between you. It might hurt him, but it's better to hurt once than hurt for a lifetime." She wanted Austin to end this as soon as possible, before things went too far. Hearing those words, Chris felt like someone had stabbed him in the heart. He ran out of the bookstore, tears streaming down his face. He couldn't believe that Austin thought of him that way, that he didn't love him, that there was no hope between them. He felt like the whole world was collapsing beneath his feet. He had placed so much hope in this relationship, and now it had all vanished into thin air. Chris decided to give up. He didn't want to bother Austin anymore, didn't want to embarrass him. He knew that he couldn't force anyone to love him, and perhaps Austin was right. He deserved someone better than him. He secretly prayed, "Please let me forget him. Please let me find someone who truly loves me." In the days that followed, Chris didn't go to the bookstore anymore. He focused on his studies and tried to forget about Austin. He joined the school's drama club, finding joy in the roles and trying to fill the emptiness in his heart. But no matter how hard he tried, the image of Austin still haunted his mind. Every night, he remembered his warm smile, his intelligent eyes, and his gentle voice. He remembered the rainy afternoons at the bookstore, the late-night conversations, and the warm hugs. One night, Chris received a text message from an unknown number. He hesitated, looking at the phone screen, his heart pounding. He had a feeling that this might be a turning point. "Chris, I need you. Meet me at the Blue Moon Bar now." Chris recognized the voice. It was Austin. His heart pounded. What happened? Why did Austin need him? He felt a glimmer of hope in his heart, but he was also afraid that he would be hurt again. Without hesitation, Chris ran to the Blue Moon Bar. When he walked in, he saw Austin sitting alone in a corner of the bar, looking distraught. On the table was a glass of whiskey, half empty. The dim blue lights of the bar only added to his loneliness and helplessness. "Austin, what's wrong?" Chris asked, his voice worried. Austin looked up at Chris, his eyes red. He grabbed Chris's hand, pulling him down to sit beside him. His hand was trembling, showing that he was very unstable. "Chris, I'm sorry," Austin said, his voice choked with emotion. "I was wrong. I tried to deny my feelings. But I can't. I love you. Chris, I love you so much." These words were like a miracle, healing every wound in Chris's heart. Chris stared at Austin in disbelief. You're telling the truth?" He was afraid that this was just a dream, that he would wake up and realize that he was still alone and miserable. "It's true," Austin replied, squeezing Chris's hand tightly. "I know this might sound crazy, but I can't live without you. I need you, Chris." He confessed that he had missed Chris like crazy in the days that he hadn't come to the bookstore. He realized that his life would be meaningless without him. Chris embraced Austin, tears of happiness flowing freely. Finally, Austin had admitted his feelings. Finally, he had the man he loved. He felt like he was living in a fairy tale, a story that he had never dared to dream of. "I love you too, Austin," Chris said, his voice choked with emotion. "I love you more than anything in the world." He vowed to himself that he would love Austin for the rest of his life, that he would never leave him. From that night on, Chris and Austin officially became a couple. They overcame all the difficulties together, faced the stigma of society, and proved to everyone that their love was genuine. They weren't afraid to show their feelings in public. They held hands while walking down the street. They exchanged sweet kisses. They wanted to show the world that their love had nothing to hide. However, life wasn't always rosy. Chris's family opposed this relationship. Friends shunned him, and Austin also faced a lot of pressure from work and family. Especially Chris's mother, a conservative and strict woman, vehemently opposed this relationship. She thought that Chris was deviating, and tried everything she could to separate the two. One day, Austin received an attractive offer from a major publisher in New York. It was an opportunity for him to fulfill his dream of becoming a famous writer. But to do that, He had to leave Harmony Creek and move to New York. This was the opportunity that he had been waiting for so long. But it meant that he would have to leave Chris. Austin knew that if he accepted this offer, he would have to leave Chris. Maybe forever. He didn't know what to do. Had to choose between love and career. He felt like he was standing between two abysses. Just one wrong step, he would fall into the abyss. "I know you have to go," Chris said, his voice sad when he heard Austin tell him this story. "I don't want to hinder your dreams. Go, Austin. Pursue your career." He tried to appear strong, but inside he was screaming in pain. He didn't want Austin to leave him, but he also didn't want him to regret giving up his dreams. "But I don't want to leave you," Austin said, hugging Chris tightly in his arms. "I don't know if I can live without you." He felt like he was being torn in two. One part wanted to stay in Harmony Creek with Chris. One part wanted to go to New York to pursue his passion. "We'll find a way," Chris said, comforting Austin. "We'll keep in touch. We'll see each other often. I believe that our love is strong enough to overcome any distance." He wanted to show Austin that no matter where he was, he would always be there to support him. Austin looked at Chris with grateful eyes. He knew this kid was a strong and reliable person. He believed that if anyone could help him overcome this, it was Chris. He secretly prayed, "Please give us the strength to overcome this challenge." "Thank you," Austin said, kissing Chris deeply. "I promise I'll never forget you. I'll always love you." And so Austin left Harmony Creek, went to New York to pursue his career. Chris stayed in Harmony Creek, continuing his studies and waiting for the day he would be reunited with Austin. He knew that the road ahead would be difficult, but he believed that their love would be a beacon to light his way, helping him overcome all difficulties. As time passed, Chris and Austin kept in touch with each other by phone and email. They shared all the joys and sorrows in life and always encouraged each other to try. They watched movies online together, read books to each other over the phone, and sent each other small gifts to express their feelings. One day, Chris received a call from Austin. His voice seemed a little strange, as if he was trying to hide something. "Chris, I have great news for you," Austin said, his voice excited. "I published my first book and it has become a phenomenon. I achieved my dream." He told Chris about the crowded book signings, the praise from critics, and the television interviews. "I'm so happy for you, Austin," Chris said, his voice overjoyed. "I knew you could do it." He felt proud of Austin, but inside he also felt a little worried. He was afraid that Austin would change, would forget about him when he became famous. But that's not all. Austin continued, "I decided to come back to Harmony Creek. I can't live without you. Chris, I want to build a family with you. Right where we met." He confessed that he had felt lonely and empty even though he had achieved success in his career. He realized that his true happiness was being with Chris. Chris choked up, unable to speak. He couldn't believe that Austin would sacrifice his promising career to be with him. He felt like he was the luckiest person in the world. "I agree," Chris said, tears of happiness flowing freely. "I agree, Austin. I want to marry you. I want to build a family with you." And so, after many years of separation, Chris and Austin were finally reunited. They hugged each other tightly, as if they didn't want to leave each other for another second. They got married in an intimate ceremony in Harmony Creek, witnessed by family and friends. Chris's mother, after many years of opposition, finally accepted their relationship. She realized that Chris and Austin's love was genuine, and that they would always be there to love and support each other. Their life wasn't always smooth sailing, but they always loved and supported each other. Overcoming all the difficulties, they built a happy home and proved to the world that love can overcome all obstacles. Even if it's a high school student and a man 10 years older in a small town in the American South. They became a symbol of love and hope, inspiring others to dare to live true to their hearts. But even as life settled into contentment, a question still lingered in Chris's mind. Would Austin ever regret giving up his promising career in New York to return to him? Would the dreams left unfulfilled ever haunt him in the quiet of the long nights? Only time would tell.